was kind of a indoor type of guy, or he didn't really get down with the guns and the hunting and the arrows and all of that. That wasn't really his thing. He was really the chef in the family. So he didn't really go out and get the food. He just made sure that it tasted good once it came back. So Jacob says to Esau, after Esau comes back home from hunting, Jacob is making this stew. And Esau says, Jacob, man, that stew you be making is fire. And he said, I'm starving, man. I need something to eat. And Jacob says, well, I'll give you some of this food if you give me your birthright. And so Esau kind of thought about it, and he said, man, the birthright ain't going to do me no good if I die of starvation. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to you so I can get some of this food. And so at that point, Esau, being the firstborn son, gave away everything that he had coming to him from his rightful place as being the firstborn son, and he gave it to his younger brother, Jacob. Jacob was then, because he now had the birthright, he now received the promise of the firstborn son. And so God was actually going to make, and did actually make, his nation of people through the seed of Jacob. And it was through one encounter that Jacob had with God that God decided to change Jacob's name from Jacob to Israel. And everyone that was born after Israel was to be known as an Israelite. So that's what brings us to the point of this passage. Esau, who gave up his birthright, had descendants, and Jacob, or Israel, who received the birthright, has descendants. And the first biblical record of war for the people of God, for the Israelites, are against the descendants of those who gave up their birthright. So that brings us to this particular point in biblical history, where we see a brotherly feud taking place from the descendants of said brothers. So now that we know what's going on up until this point, we also have to understand that because Israel has never gone to war before, their war skills are very, very limited. As a matter of fact, Israel hadn't had to fight at all. They were actually overcome by the Egyptians and had just broken out of slavery from the Egyptians, and they're wandering around in the wilderness at this point. And the Amalekites find them, and they said, I don't really know why we don't like you, but we don't like you, so it's time to fight. And I think that the reasons why the Amalekites had this kind of unction to fight against the children of Israel is because they were subconsciously upset that the children of Israel were blessed by God and they weren't. What they didn't remember was the fact that the reason why they weren't blessed by God is that by their own choice. They chose to give up the birthright, and in a sense, they chose to give up the blessings that come along with it. So they're really mad about the decisions that they made. So now they want to fight Israel because of the decisions that they made. Have you ever had a situation where somebody's mad at you for something they did? They want to take out their anger and frustrations on you because of a bad choice that they made. And instead of looking in the mirror and dealing with the problem from the root, they want to take out their anger and aggression on you like you did something wrong to them when they made the choice themselves. Well, that's what's happening right now with the Amalekites and the Israelites. The Amalekites are upset because they are not blessed like they feel they should be, even though it was their choice. So at this point in time, the Israelites don't know really anything about war or the concepts of war or anything like that. But one thing they do have is this guy named Joshua. Okay? And Joshua is one of those type of people where fighting is just what he does. He's a fighter. And it's not necessarily in a negative sense like a bully or anything like that. But some people just naturally are just natural fighters. It doesn't matter what they're fighting against. And I think these people just don't like to lose. So they have this kind of innate sense to scrap it out so that they don't lose whatever it is they have. You know, some people, it seems like every time they get sick and they have to go to the hospital, they keep coming out and they just keep fighting and keep fighting. And some people, they deal with financial situations and you look back and they got everything that they lost. They just keep fighting, they keep fighting. And Joshua was like one of those people. He just had this fight in him. So Moses as the leader, recognized that Joshua had this fight in him. So Moses goes to Joshua and says, Joshua, I want you to go and pick some men that you trust to go and fight with you so that we can defend ourselves against the Amalekites. And at this point, Moses says, while you're doing the fighting, I got some other things that I have to take care of. Wow. Now, one of the things that I want to bring to your attention is that when Moses went to Joshua and said, I want you to go fight and I'm going to go take care of some other things, you didn't read anything about Joshua saying, well, why I got to go fight while you chilling? See, sometimes people can't get stuff done because they too worried about what somebody else is doing. See, everybody has something that they're supposed to be doing. As a matter of fact, the church is referenced as the body of Christ. And in the body you have many parts, and each part has a function. And if one part wants to function like another part, then you have a problem. It's a disfiguration, so to speak. If one part wants to function like something else, or if one part gets jealous of something else, you have a problem. As a matter of fact, medically, cancer is something that gets into your body and turns your cells against each other. So anytime something in your body turns against another body part, it's a cancer to the body. So Joshua understood that he was a certain body part and Moses was a certain body part. And when Moses asked him to function in what his body part does, there was no resistance from Joshua to do so. See, a lot of times, especially in the church, everybody wants to be in front of somebody. Everybody wants to be seen and heard. And the church has become stagnant in a hole because we can't function the way that we're supposed to function because the hands want to be the feet and the feet want to be the hands and everybody wants to be the head. So if everybody's the head, ain't nobody walking because ain't no feet. So we got some problems going on. But in this early church, we see that at least in this instance, somebody knows their place and their position. Now, here's the thing. Moses is in a sense the head of the Israelites. He's the head of this body. Moses is the head. Now, a lot of people want to be the head, but they don't want to do what comes along with being the head. Okay? Now, this is one thing that I learned when I went into ministry, right? I thought, I kind of understood that it was more than just this. You know, what you see, somebody standing in front of you preaching or teaching. I had to understand that because, you know, I would see my grandfather studying and things like that during the week. But what I didn't realize is how much other things go on that y'all will never know. What I didn't realize is that 90% of ministry is not this. And so I had gained a new respect for people in ministry because, and not even just a pulpit ministry, like if you really look into any form of ministry, there's more to it than what you see on a Sunday morning. And so Moses understood that being the head, not only do I have the responsibility of telling everybody else what to do, but if something goes wrong, I have to take the hit for it. Okay? So Moses says, you know what? I need you to go handle this while I'll go and handle that. What's that? I'm glad you asked. I'm about to tell you. In verses 9 and 10, Moses says, I'm going to the top of the hill. Okay, Moses says, I'm going to the top of the hill. Now, if you look at this passage of scripture with the naked eye, it almost looks like Moses is saying, all right, Joshua, you're going to go fight and I'm going to go hide just in case things go wrong. But that's not quite what's going on here. Moses says to Joshua, Joshua, you go fight and I'm going to go ahead and handle this. He says, I'm going to go to the top of the hill. Now, what does going to the top of the hill mean? Going to the top of the hill means that Moses is now in seclusion. All right. Okay, because the battles don't happen on the hill. The battle happens in the valley. That's right. I still sleep just a little bit. The battle doesn't happen on your way up. The battle happens while you're in the valley. What I'm trying to really get y'all to understand, if y'all just wake up for just 1 second, y'all get it. What I'm trying to get y'all to understand is that you have to deal with a valley situation in order to have victory. You can't have victory without a battle. And if the battle happens in the valley, then you have to understand that I got to take care of what's happening in the valley before I can be elevated to the top of the hill. See, Moses had already dealt with his valley situation. Moses had already been in seclusion when he was in Egypt and he was raised in the palace, and he realized these are not my people, but his people didn't want him because he was raised by the people who wasn't his people. So then he killed another people, and then he had to run from both people because both people looking at him and looking for him, because now he's a murderer. Okay? So Moses has to deal with his own stuff. So Moses kind of has some insight when he sees this valley situation. And he says, Joshua, you're going to learn something while you're down there, but I need you to go down there while I go to the top of this hill. I need to go into seclusion. Why does he need to go into seclusion? Because if he goes to the top of the hill, nothing can catch him off guard. If he goes to the top of the hill, he can see everything from the top of the hill. The NFL is getting ready to start soon. And if you watch the football game, if you watch any football game, you're focused on the action that's happening on the field. But what you don't realize is that there are offensive and defensive coordinators that are sitting up in the box. And the reason why they're sitting up in the box is because as they begin to decipher and try to decide what play they're going to run next, and as they try to develop their strategies, they need to be able to see everything from a higher level. They're able to look down on the field and be able to make adjustments for the game based off of what they see from up in the skybox. But watch this, the head coach is down on the field with the players, because the head coach has to deal with the players while the coordinators deal with the plays. Your game will fail if you only have a coach or if you only have a coordinator. You have to have a coordinator and a coach, because somebody has to deal with the plays and somebody has to deal with the players. So the coordinators will say, I can see everything that's going on, whereas the coach can only see on surface level. But check this out. When the coordinators signal down to the coach what play we should run next, it's only a suggestion. Because as the head coach has the right to say, no, we're not going to do that. But if the head coach says, no, we're not going to do that, and it doesn't work, the head coach takes the hit for it. And if it does work, the coach gets the credit for it. But the coordinators in the skybox, I bet y'all can't name me one offensive coordinator in the NFL. But even the women can name me at least 3 head coaches. Here's the point that I'm trying to make. The things that are most important, you never see how they worked before they got to you. God is all-knowing. You don't know what plays he's calling to make sure you win this game. The only thing you see is the finished product. So while you're cheering about your Super Bowl, you don't realize that God has already set the plays for you to win. So Moses goes up to the top of the hill like an offensive coordinator, and he says, I'm not worried about, because see, once the battle is over, if we win this battle, everybody's going to say, Joshua, you're such a great warrior, and you led us to victory. And nobody's going to know that Moses was up at the top of the hill calling the plays. But Moses has enough sense to know that I don't care whether anybody knows what's going on or not. I got to go into seclusion so that nothing catches us off guard. The next thing that happens as Moses is on the top of the hill is that he has alone time with God. Everybody else is focused on what's going on in the valley, and Moses goes to the top of the hill where he can hear from God without distraction. Okay? So Moses actually has enough sense to know that even in the midst of my chaos, if I can find some alone time with God, I can figure out what my next place should be. So Moses goes to the top of the hill. He goes to the top of the hill so that nothing will catch him off guard. And he goes to the top of the hill for his alone time with God. But the next reason he goes to the top of the hill is because that's where he finds his backup. Y'all a little bit confused. I know why y'all confused, because I was confused too, and I'm like, God, what you talking about? Because you said that he was in seclusion, so how can his backup be on the top of the hill when everybody else is down there? Well, he said, just flip a few more pages and go over to Psalm 121, and he said, I look to the hills from which cometh my help. Where does my help come from? My help comes from God. So I have to look up. I have to have a higher mindset. And this part is kind of interesting, because you have to look at it from a physical aspect, but you also have to look at it from a metaphorical aspect, because not only am I standing at the top of the hill, me standing at the top of the hill does me no good if I have a valley mentality. So he says, as I look to the hills from which cometh my help, I have to elevate my way of thinking and understand that God's ways are not my ways and his thoughts are not my thoughts. And so when he tells me to do something that doesn't necessarily make sense, I have to trust him and what he knows, and I have to trust him in his perfect will to know and to be able to elevate my thinking enough to say that I can't think high enough to outthink you. See, sometimes elevating your thinking is understanding that you don't know as much as you think you know. See, smart people are not the ones who talk the most. The smart people are the ones who listen and ask the most questions. So if you want to test somebody's intelligence, listen to the questions that they ask. Listen to the questions that they ask. You ever went to somebody and you go and tell them something, you know, you're just talking and you're not asking for no advice, you're just having a general conversation, but they find a way to tell you what they know. Like you asked them what they know, or like you wanted to know what they know. And so sometimes that is really somebody's mechanism to cover up how much they really don't know. And they feel like that if they talk fast enough that you're not going to catch all the wrong stuff that they said. And when I get to people like that, I just look at them and I say, oh, okay. All right, yeah, I'll pray for you in that. In my mind, I'm thinking that's not, you're not probably going to be able to do that for you, because that's not making much sense. So Moses says, you know what? I'm going to go into seclusion. I'm going to go to the top of the hill. I'm going to go and find my help. I'm going to elevate my thinking. I'm going to separate myself from the distractions so that I can hear from God. The next thing that Moses says in verses 9 and 10 is, not only does he say that I'm going to go to the top of the hill, Moses says that I'm going to go to the top of the hill and I'm going to take my staff with me. Okay, I'm going to go. Keep in mind, Moses is the head. Remember, Moses is the head. Moses is the CEO. Moses is the president of operations. Moses is calling the shots. So when Moses says, I'm going to take my staff, he's not talking about the group of people that are under him. When Moses says, I'm going to take my staff, Moses says, I'm going to take my walking stick. Okay, I'm going to take my staff, I'm going to take my walking stick. Now, keep in mind before we go any further that this is the same staff that Moses took when he went to go visit Pharaoh to try to free his people. This is the same staff that Moses used to split the Red Sea. This staff is not just any stick or piece of wood. This staff has some symbolism and representations. This staff represents support. The staff represents support. Moses was a journeyman. He did a lot of walking, so he would use the staff almost in some instances as a third leg, so to speak. He would use it so that as he was climbing these hills, he would be able to use the staff to support his weight so that he wouldn't fall back down from where he came from. Moses used this staff as a support that if he was to ever get tired, he had something to lean on. This staff also represents power. Remember, I told you Moses used this staff to do miracles. Moses used this staff to bring plagues. Moses turned this staff into a serpent that devoured all of the other serpents in Pharaoh's chambers. Moses used this staff to split the Red Sea. This staff was a representation of power. God said, as long as you have this staff, then my power will be with you. The last thing that the staff represents is the power of truth. I'm still asleep. Okay. The power of truth represents support, power, The power of truth. Support power and the power of truth. What is the power of truth? Why is that different from just power? What is the power of truth? The problem is, y'all